What's the dumbest thing an ex ever said to try and win you back? Okay, I know it was bad to dump you while you were in intensive care, but you were really bumming me out. You're a lot better now, though, so it's all good. Was in and out of critical condition and had several emergency ops over the course of 5 weeks in hospital. He dumped me over the phone while I was lying in my hospital bed. After I was discharged, he waited 2 months, then tried to come back. He also never came to visit once. He said he didn't want to see me that way as it wasn't very attractive. Told him to get fricked. I just don't think either of us have the right mental state to date other people right now. Come home please. Bring McDonald's. I know this must have been frustrating for you, but I love it. The presumption. It's breathtaking. He broke up with me by sort of ghosting me after 2 years together. He wouldn't show up when we had plans, then text me later and apologize and say sweet things, but go on to ignore my calls for a week. He set his status to single on Facebook, so I figured it was done and deleted him. Almost a year later he sent me a text saying he was sorry, that he was willing to talk and answer any questions I had, and that he regretted what he did because I was the second best girlfriend he'd ever had. I crap you not. I told him I didn't need his answers and didn't want to be his friend. He never bothered me after that. My ex ghosted me too. He was that guy that would make you feel all special, then never communicate unless it was on his terms. He stopped talking to me for about 6 months. After the first 2 weeks I just stopped caring. 6 months later he calls me asking to go on a date. I'm just like, you have the wrong number. Sorry. I didn't love you then, but I love you now. B. You cheated on me 2 days ago. What a coincidence. I loved you then, but I sure don't now. She cheated. I said so long. Get out of my house. She did. Moved in with this guy. She showed up a few weeks later with her cat and some belongings and said she made a mistake. Wants me back because she needs me to take care of her. Sorry, what? You're trying to move in while cheating on me and simultaneously asking me to pamper you? My phone rings. Hey, just wanted to let you know that I'm getting married this afternoon and I'm pregnant, so now is your last chance. 2 years later. My phone rings. Hey, I'm pregnant again and getting married again. This is your real last chance. A. You'll catch her on the next one. Tried the Olay fake pregnancy to keep me around. Only thing is I'm the female. I'm not sure how he thought he could convince me I was pregnant. I'm pregnant. Wait, no, that doesn't make sense. You're pregnant. Well, she started the apology off by punching me in the back of the head. If we break up, it's just a matter of time before you ask for your laptop back, and I use it for school, so I'm going to have to drop out and my kids are going to be raised in poverty. Do you really want that on your conscience? Done. That's some fine crazy logic right there. I once dated this guy who literally carved my name into his hand. He said he did it because he couldn't afford a tattoo. And when I broke up with him for it, he said, but your name is carved into my hand. I'm not sure if that was supposed to mean me stay, or if he at that moment realized how stupid he was. We don't have to be boyfriend and girlfriend, but I don't want you having sex with other people. My new girlfriend is terrible. I miss you a lot. Like, I sometimes regret leaving you. You are so much better than her. Just so you know, I'm going to dump her soon. After we go on vacation, because I'm using her miles to buy my ticket. Like, there are so many things wrong with that. And the vacation was 2 months away. I told him he had made decisions, so I didn't feel bad for the fact he missed me and never spoke to him again. My ex-husband did this to me. I didn't realize how much I was going to miss you. You understand me better. I call her your name all the time. We were so good together. 1 month before the divorce was final. After he left me to move in with his pregnant GF, I just started laughing at him. I couldn't stop. He got mad and left again. Had an ex tell me that if I did not take her back she would sue me. Long story short, I'm now a proud owner of a victory in court. Your Honor, I demand the plaintiff sleep with me and take me to dinner. I am the only one that wants you. He decided to make a grand gesture for my birthday, which was about 6 months after the breakup. He had a cake made in the shape of Australia. He had it shipped to me in a locked steamer trunk. Keys in the card. All of this was based off of a line from Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. She may cry but her tears will dry when I hand her the keys to her shiny new Australia. Double quote. This is after I found out that I was the other woman and I had started to date someone else. It was just painfully awkward. Side note, the cake was dry. That's a lot of work for it to not be moist. I thought you'd miss me by now. No you lying cheating bastard. Finally broke up with him after 3 years. His big gesture to get me back, an email about how he couldn't live without me, ended as follows. I get now that you're not a W. That's why I treated you the way I did. I thought you were a W, but now I see you're not. Wow. Be still my beating heart. And people say that romance is dead. A month after we had broken up, I started dating a new guy. My ex told me that he would cut his hair to look like the new guy's, dress like the new guy, and act exactly like the new guy if I got back with him. I just miss the boy I used to know. Then she turned around and walked away. She later texted me, I wanted you to run after me. You obviously missed the part where this was a Nicholas Sparks story and not real life. I'm just kidding. We are not really broken up. Me. WTF no sorry that's not how this works. Reminds me of my first serious boyfriend. I told him I was ending it and he just smiled and said number. Took me a couple days to convince him I actually meant yes. But my mom and I were talking, and I was going to start letting you hang out with your friends in a week or 2. I know it's been like a year, but I've asked out 4 other girls and they've all said no. So I thought I'd try again with you. Nobody will ever love you like I did. Great, I could do without being loved via a fist to the stomach. My abusive ex-husband sent me a long, impersonal email 3 years after I left him. My favorite part was, we should get back together. I don't want to be with you, but by some miracle of God, I might grow to tolerate or even enjoy your company. He was serious. I laughed for about 2 minutes and then sent screenshots to my boyfriend. Those are some world-class levels of delusion. I didn't frick both of the twins. I only fricked one. Spoiler, she did frick them both. I know I cheated, but your dong was better than his. I was thinking about you the whole time. After telling me she didn't love me, leaving the kids with a friend whilst I was at work so she could go get drunk with her male friend, getting drunk whilst throwing my son a birthday party and texting her male friend whilst locking herself in her bedroom and letting the other parents run the party for her. I was at work. The final straw came when she told me I wasn't invited to her party her brother was throwing, so I had to stay home to watch the kids. She had left herself logged onto social media, so her sexual messages to her male friend were pinging up every minute or so until he told her the taxi was outside. I changed the locks that night and packed her clothes and put them outside her mum's house. When she came home she was screaming and throwing bricks at the house, so I told her if she didn't leave I'd call the police. Drum roll please. But you can't just turn off 10 years of marriage, you must still love me. I would have treated you better, except I thought you'd never leave me. I promise I won't try to stab you again. I would have married you, you know, if we had stayed together. Whoa, so you mean we could have been in this hideous codependent sham of a relationship forever? Him. Just talk to me and tell me why. Me. Because it's not working and I'm not happy. Him. But I've changed. It'll be different. Me. Number. I've made my decision. I'm done. We are over. Him. Is there somebody else? If there is, just tell me. Just tell me who he is. Tell me who you're freaking. Me. I'm not doing this. You're acting crazy. I'm hanging up. Him. If you hang up on me I will kill myself. Me. Stop this. You can't guilt me into staying on the phone. Now I've got crap to do. I have to go. Him. What do you have to do? You're just standing in your living room talking to me on the phone. You don't look very busy to me. I can see you. You know. It was a long distance relationship. He lived in a town across the state. Stalking is not flattering. It's terrifying. You're just standing in your living room talking to me on the phone. You don't look very busy to me. I can see you. You know. That's a line fresh out of a horror movie. It won't happen again. We were 17 and it was so obvious that he was cheating. The guy didn't even try to hide anything. I still remember getting a message from his best friend saying so he and her are all over each other at the moment. Bless your socks, Dylan. Saved me a crap ton of teen anguish. He tried to stop me from leaving by asking what day it was. I was surprised to hear that because it was exactly a year since we got together. I didn't do it on purpose. It just happened so. I answered why. It's the 5th of December. And he said please stay with me until the new year. To be in that mess for another 3 weeks? No. Thank you. The same ex tried to get me back after that by saying that I'm ugly and won't get another man even if I try to pay him. When I asked how he had tolerated me for so long, then he answered I could have tolerated you for the rest of my life. Romantic. I'm paraphrasing here, but it boiled down to ugh, this guy I cheated on you with is so awful. We should hang out. And I was all like Nabby. I'll publish every nude pic you sent me. I left him anyways. He never published anything. Left a dead rose in my mailbox after calling my house about 100 times. Called later and asked if I liked my present and told me that's how he feels without me. Dead and withered. Somehow, I was not moved to take him back. I bet he thought it was a super poetic gesture. Broke up with dirtbag ex while in Mexico with my mom. He said I cheated on him and told me my dad died to get away from my spoiled princess ways. He spent the next 6 hours calling me and my mom trying to win me back. Roaming charges were disgusting, so we didn't answer or read the texts. Way too expensive. Finally my mom got pee and answered the phone. He was breathing heavy. My mom asked what he wanted. He said, I just want to talk to her. You have to let me talk. My mom said, fine. Talk. He said, all Sarah had to do was. And then my mom hung up cause she didn't want to hear more about what I did wrong. After reading over 100 texts about what I did wrong, how awful I was, how much he misses me, the girl he slept with, the lies he told me, the apologies for the lies, the endless litany of how he'll change etc. I turned off my phone and didn't turn it on until the next morning. That morning I had almost 100 missed calls and 18 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. Frick you Ken. Damn it Barbie. Come on, take one for the team. How what? Cheated on me with more women than I have fingers and toes. Then I found out. Taught him a new one. He goes and gets a huge tattoo on his forearm of a nickname he gave me that I never liked, and was shocked when I told him to go deep throat a cactus. Was the nickname Glowtits. College professors of Reddit. What is the dumbest thing a student has said or done? When we have you turn papers into an online anti-cheating software, don't buy the paper from a previous student on those note-sharing sites. I promise you it's in the database. One of those sites claimed my paper had too many similarities to 3 other papers and the professor got insanely confused. It was a group project where everyone wrote the introduction, methods, materials, and data sections together, and then we wrote our own discussion and results. It took her a disturbingly long time to figure out why the whole class was cheating in groups of 4. Here, my favorite was a student who came up to the professor after class and asked if he could take the quiz a day late because it was on arm day and his arms would be too tired to write. Not me, but my aunt has taught college and high school level history courses. She once assigned a paper on something to do with the role of rhetoric in the Roman Empire. I don't remember the exact wording of her assignment, but it was something to this effect. A student, completely and entirely missing the point of the assignment, and possibly of the English language in general, spun an elaborate paper of the fictional life and military and political career of a Roman soldier, named Rhetoric. My aunt still has the paper somewhere. It's a hoot. The world needs to read that paper. Find it at all costs. For a glassblowing class my university has. So my school is very STEM focused, like 70% engineering majors. So there isn't a lot of artistic talent among us, but some people are really bad. So I had one guy who was struggling and no matter what I did he just wasn't getting it. His pieces were generally very small, sloppy, asymmetrical, etc. So for his final he hands in this beautiful vase, cool colors, symmetric, nice size and weight. Well, the professor was looking it over and giving her compliments except one problem. She had made it a few days before and it went missing from the shelf where we put pieces while we wait for people to pick them up. So the guy tries to turn in a piece made by the actual professor. I overheard two students have the following conversation. Student 1, isn't it awesome we get to live right by the ocean? Student 2, that's not an ocean. 1, but it has a beach. If it's not the ocean, what is it? 2, I don't know. I work in Chicago. I went to a college that is on Lake Ontario, which is the lake that is in between New York and Canada. I've heard a few different students seriously refer to it as the Atlantic Ocean and wondering why it wasn't as salty that far inland. College course. Students are asked to estimate the date in which Attila took over Europe. It wasn't a history class. The goal was showing that people's estimates are influenced by those of the people around them. Except that the first girl said 6,000. When the professor said 6,000 what she replied AD. She's not wrong yet. We were having a lecture for a course about cultural awareness. The lecturer asks any questions. One guy raises his hand and asks, is the Murray River brown because Aborigines bathe in it? If you wanted to play it straight, you could argue that a high traffic river would be naturally cloudier than one that experienced fewer usage. Not me but a colleague. Two students came to see him during office HRS with a complaint. Your exams discriminate against students who can't think. He swears that's a direct quote. I think they must have meant to say something like, can't think under pressure, but that's not how it came out. Out of morbid curiosity he asked them what their major was. Answer, we're both pre-med. Yeah, you might wanna rethink that plan, kids. I was in an American foreign policy class, and on the first day of class the professor asks, what is the capital of Canada? After a couple of incorrect guesses at Toronto and Montreal, one girl blurts out Albuquerque. The professor looks at her and says Albuquerque, as in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He got a good kick out of it, and on every test the rest of the semester, there was a multiple choice question asking for the capital of Canada, with Albuquerque as one of the choices. Similar thing happened to me. In a presentation in my Japanese class, I read a hiragana character wrong and accidentally said I was a noodle. The prof called me noodle for the rest of the semester. 20 years have gone by and the only thing I remember how to say in Japanese is I am a noodle. Word for word freaking copying of an assignment, even down to the other guy's student number, spelling mistakes, and format. Not a professor, but a graduate here. We gave an exam question where the students had to explain the difference between wild boars and domesticated pigs and how those traits reflect current theories of domestication. More than one student referred to the boar's tusks as horns, but one particular student wrote the whole answer about how pigs lost their antlers due to domestication. Pig antlers. As a note, I double checked and he was a native English speaker too, so this was not an issue of translation. Oh dear. I was in a college psychology class and one of the papers asked how would you explain emotions to an alien from another planet who didn't have any. Some kid's answer was how he'd explain emotions to a Chinese person. I was at a final one time, and the professor was counting the students. He then said I printed off exactly enough tests, but there appears to be one more student than test. So, if you're here, and have never seen my face, please leave. Someone got up and left. We are all very confused what that dude was thinking. This was an 8 AM chemistry final on a Saturday. Not so much stupid as much as it was goddamned hilarious. My wife and I, both professors, were crossing the quad after a meeting. A very frantic girl runs across campus, yelling into the phone, just delete the really naked ones. It's my go-to ridiculous student story and I never even knew her name. As opposed to slightly naked. Here's a story from one of my husband's colleagues. After an exam, a student told the professor, I didn't know the answers to the essay questions, so I made up my own essay questions and answered them. The professor replied, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard, and when I go to lunch, I'm going to tell all my friends. Copy pasted the first sentence from Wikipedia as his full essay. In one of my English classes, we had to write a paper about an event that occurred on our birthday or a biography on someone that shares our birthday. One kid copied the entire Wikipedia page on his topic, pictures, titles, the sidebar with the different languages, and the references. Didn't even edit it before he turned it in. I was a college lab TA. for many years, and we used to actually keep a running log of all the stupid stuff students would do. My favorite to this day. Student T.A. My thermometer isn't working, can you please take a look? Me. Walk over and look at the setup. Try not to burst out laughing. That's a pipette. Student. Not a thermometer. He literally forgot what a thermometer looks like. We were doing color illumination and a student called me over to see if she was looking at the right thing in the microscope. 1. She didn't have a slide on the stage to focus on. 2. She didn't have the light source turned on. 3. She didn't have the microscope plugged in yet. I had a student come to office hours to contest his exam grade, specifically the short essays. I just don't think it's fair I lost points here. I'm being punished for not knowing the right answer. Me. That's the point of an exam. In the first semester I ever taught freshman composition, I had a student who came to my office hours drunk, submitted a formal essay with a cover page that had his name and the course information written on it in different magic markers, and submitted another formal essay printed on 5 pages of fanfold tractor feed printer paper with the tractor guide still attached, the pages not separated from each other, and with a staple in the upper left corner. Think about that for a moment. You can guess his grade. I was a graduate for an architectural history class last semester, and this one lovely student who got a 2-stroke 100 on his final exam. Yes, you read that correctly. Informed me, or the professor rather, that this class was way too freaking hard, and you expect way too freaking much of us. I obviously failed this class, so frick you and see you next semester. This was his written answer to the last essay question in a class that he is required to take as an architecture major with the only professor that teaches it. I'm just a T, but a surprising amount of students and labs like to turn in lab reports that their friends who already took the lab wrote in a previous semester. And I mean, they receive the lab report from their friend and then turn it in without even changing the name or date at the top of the paper. It happens every semester without fail. I had a T once read a student's lab report out loud because the student had literally typed random words in it, assuming no one would read it to grade. Biology professor here. I had a student give a presentation on genetics, only it wasn't so much genetics, but a compilation of neo-Nazi websites saying that Hitler was right for purifying the gene pool. Had to shut that crap down real quick. Not a professor, but this was when I was in grad school. Student in back of class. Can you get antisocial personality disorder from a sneeze? Teacher. What? Student. My friend is really mean sometimes and acts like lists off random symptoms of antisocial, which we'd been discussing that day, and he sneezed on me. I mean, do I go to the doctor and get a shot? Crickets. How did this girl get into grad school? No, sweetie. Number. You cannot get a non-communicable mental health disorder from a goddamn sneeze. I'm a paramedic. I have had more than one patient who thought their diabetes was a sexually transmitted disease. I teach English at a private Christian college. While discussing The Weight of Glory by C.S. Lewis, we broach the topic of Abraham's bosom as shown in the story of the rich man and Lazarus. I say to the class, being mature, "What is a bosom?" Dead silence. From the back of the classroom, I hear a voice, "A but." Now, I try not to mock my students for any reason, but I couldn't help but laugh. After I collect myself, I say, "No, it's not a but. After Lazarus died, he did not go to Abraham's butt." After class, he told me that the passage in question made a lot more sense to him now. I had to explain to some people for a group project what the word bosom meant. I said chestularia, but they heard me say chestularia, like a disease. I teach voice lessons. One of the course requirements is to attend concerts. We all have various ways that we audit actual attendance. In my first year, I made them write concert reports, as well as bring me a program or ticket or some such. One student, who was always a little scattered, turned in a concert paper for a concert called the Annual Chancellor's Concert. As I read his paper, it quickly became apparent that he had not attended the concert, but rather had looked up the concert program online and attempted to write something relevant. This was apparent because the program he was writing about had occurred some 5 years earlier, and not on the concert that he was claiming to have attended. Apparently the implications of the word annual was lost on him. Oh, let me count the ways. I had a student miss his midterm exam because, and I quote, I got fired from my band and I was too bummed out to come to school. I had another adult student, 35, who pitched a fit during a meeting of students and teachers to figure out times for private lessons because he claimed we were disorganized. I got him calmed down enough to resume the scheduling, and then he went off again, ending with, if this had been the Marines, someone would have been shot by now. Then there was the student who thought he was too cool for school and used to wear mirrored sunglasses all the time, as in class, etc. One Monday he didn't show up to class, and it turned out that over the weekend he'd been at a party where there was alcohol and it got raided by the cops. Since he was underage he tried to run for it, but since he was wearing his shades and it was at night he ran face first into a fence instead. Some kid gave a speech on why weed should be legalized and only used quotes from Snoop Dogg. I'm not a professor, but one of my professors told us this funny story. He was teaching one of the basic level literature classes, a class that only exists for students to fulfill the core curriculum requirements. So of course, the class is full of students who don't care about interpreting literature. There was a group of students in the back, all friends, all frat bro types, business majors. After the final exam, one of those guys emailed the professor and said, "Why did I get a D on the final? I copied off my friend next to me and you gave him a C. That's bull crap." My professor was shocked, because our school has a no tolerance rule. Anyone found guilty of plagiarism gets expelled. He decided to ignore the email because he was so indifferent to that student. Whoa, that's an impressive act of kindness and a completely blown opportunity to screw with a student. Obligatory not a professor goes here. Okay, anyway, I was actually pretty solid bros with one of the professors in my major, a guy who had been teaching at the college for nearly 40 years. He was an oddball who everyone thought wasn't the sharpest bulb in the sky, and he'd tell me stories about dumb kids who tried to pull a fast one on him. The best one actually came with evidence, a note on yellowed paper he'd kept from 1985. It was a piece torn off from something like a white paper bag with ballpoint writing, and all it said was, "Hello, Doctor, Morningstar. I am the doctor of Chris, last name redacted. He will not be in class today because he had a headache. I have prescribed him a medicinal herb and have told him to listen to music. He will be doing that instead. Signed, Dr. Angry Squiggle." He said it was the dumbest thing anyone had ever done, because the handwriting was easily recognized as the student's. He did let this kid off the hook, though, because he'd been through the 60s, so, you know, whatever. We almost framed that for his retirement, though. Wasn't the sharpest bulb in the sky? Well, that's a new one. Not a professor, but was in the class. Okay, the course I was taking was Intro to Human Evolution. Covered the science of evolution, the history of discoveries of our relatives in the Homo genus, the chain of evolution that we're the end result of, and how scientists classify animals, etc, etc. It was a fun class. Anyway, the class was your standard once a week lecture with a once a week lab section with a TAE. It also had an online component through one of those courseware software packages that we'd use to turn in stuff online and take quizzes and see the syllabus. There was also a chat room on the courses page. That's important. One week, the professor was out of town for a speaking engagement, so she arranged to have us watch a video in lecture, to write a précis about it, sort of a short summary relating the contents of the video to the section of the course we were in, and turn it in. Easy. Well, someone found a copy of the movie on YouTube or something, watched it, wrote his précis ahead of time so he wouldn't have to go to class. He sent his précis to his friend who then posted a link to it and to the video on the courseware chatroom. In a class of about 200 students, 180 or so didn't show up for the day of the video. I was not one of them. They had all watched the YouTube video and or used the guy's précis to write their own and turned it in. Some people just straight copied the guy's précis and modified some words. According to my TAE, a couple of people didn't even go that far and just slapped their name on the top. The best part about the whole thing, not only was this was all arranged and talked about on the chatroom on the courseware website that the professor and the TAs regularly read and participated in, to answer questions and whatnot. The YouTube video that this all started with was the wrong movie. It had a similar title, but it was part of a series and they had all watched and written about or copied words written about the wrong movie. So those of us who did the assignment properly got automatic A's and extra credit. People who watched the YouTube video and wrote their own thing got D's. People who copied the original précis failed the assignment and were referred to the dean of students for academic dishonesty. Now, I lied. This is the best part. A month and a half later, the professor had scheduled the same thing. Movie in class. Précis. About 5 people in the course did the same freaking thing and, again, coordinated it in the classroom chat. They found the wrong video, copied another person's work. They were expelled. Creative writing. Day 1. Professor, I want everyone to say your name, major, and favorite author. This is the only time I will tell you to lie in class. If you don't have a favorite author, make one up. Student, I'm so and so. I'm an education major. I don't have a favorite author because I don't like to read. There were actually 2 students with that exact same answer. Same major too. I worked as an English TA for adult high school classes at a community college. I was asked, did the Goths who sacked Rome wear black, and how did Shakespeare write Julius Caesar if Caesar died before Shakespeare was born? The most concerning, however, was the responses to an open book test. Q. Name 3 elements. A. Fire, water, and air. I was told that writing Motherfucker, this isn't Pokemon on the test would be frowned upon by administration. Earth, Hut, Captain Planet. Math class for non-science majors. There were a total of 25 students in the class. I was planning on cheating on all of your tests and quizzes, but now I'm pretty sure you would catch me. I'm not a professor, but as a university student I showed up for an English class a bit early where one of the students was having an impromptu meeting with the prof about the required reading for the course. This was still early in the course. I'll never forget her holding the syllabus up to the professor and saying, "But do we actually have to read these books?" The professor just said, "That's supposed to be the fun part," which was a pretty diplomatic response. I would have been a bit more incredulous. I don't know what she was expecting in a university English class. A doctors of Reddit. What is one of your favorite this dumbass cases you have experienced in regards to the patient? The woman who got into a fight with her husband, took out her handgun and fired into the ground to teach him a lesson. She shot herself in the foot. That must have looked really funny for the husband though. Man came in with a rubber band doubled around one finger. The finger was blue. Another doctor and I just looked at the finger, then looked at him. The unspoken question, never answered, was why. But the thing that bothered me then and to this day was, when it started hurting, why didn't you take the rubber band off? My friend's dad is a vet. He once told me that a lady took her cat in because it kept getting sick, meowing oddly and throwing up. It later came out she was force feeding her cat Fruit Loops for dessert, as if it were a completely normal thing to do. Here, have some freaking dessert you freaking cat. I remember a patient who came in with eye irritation. From the beginning it was clear something unusual was going on. There was an alarming amount of plant material packed under his eyelids. While rinsing it out for him he explained he was vacuum sealing marijuana and opened the lid of a tube to look inside. The actual physics of how this happened from a vacuum sealer are not clear to me. I think he was reluctant to admit he was pressurizing it to create extracts, but whatever. In any case he received a face full of pressurized marijuana, most of which seemed to collect under his eyelids. After pressurizing a container full of weed and promptly opening it inches from his face to look inside. Dumbass. The actual physics of how this happened from a vacuum sealer are not clear to me. Air rushes in and picks up the particulate, and momentum causes it to pressurize over ambient so it blasts back out carrying the debris. It will continue to cycle back and forth as it equalizes, but the initial blast will be quite powerful. Well, military medicine is a tad bit different, but same thing applies. I had this Marine come in with a big hole through his left foot, and as I'm asking him what were you doing at the time and how did it happen, he replied, I was at the range and I wanted to see if my steel toe boots were bulletproof. I guess not, doc. That's the most Marine thing I've ever read. Okay, I'm going to chuck in my paramedic, not a doctor story. This was only a few months back. A man decided to impress a group of women by jumping from the first floor of a building onto a group of umbrellas set up for an alfresco dining area on the street below. He actually told us he intended to bounce from one to the next etc, etc. Went straight through the first umbrella, of course, shattered the bones in both his lower legs instead. This was a man in his 40s. I actually asked him, "You're in your 40s and you're still using silly playground tricks to impress chicks?" He at least had the sense to look embarrassed. I then asked him, "So what happened to the women?" "Oh, they just laughed at me while looking over the edge." Similar story in regard to the age. Went to a concert for a once popular punk band, popular in Australia anyway, back in the 90s. This bloke, again in his 40s, thought he would relive his youth by doing a stage dive. Just like in the movies, the crowd parted and he crashed on through to the floor instead, had a head laceration and blood everywhere. He had shaved his head into a mohawk. Seemingly that day, the bald part was very white. He just looked like an idiot. A scribe here. One time a patient came in complaining of severe eye pain with visual disturbances in both eyes which started about 3 weeks prior. ED doc asked if they wore contacts and they said yes, and that they knew why their eyes started hurting. They hadn't been cleaning or removing their contacts before that initial 3 weeks. Then they kept freaking wearing them for those 3 weeks until they came to the ear. They were another couple days away from losing their vision permanently. The woman with 5 kids who, when asked at her midwife app if she needs contraceptive advice, goes, "Oh no, he always pulls out." Genuinely believes her 5 soon to be 6 kids are immaculate conception. During my obs and ginny block at med school, woman comes in for an abortion. Asked about contraception, says he always pulls out. The EMT who strapped my brother to the gurney literally said, "You've done a stupid ass thing today, kid." As he did it, my brother got into my dad's tool shed and started up the freaking chainsaw when no one but us very young kids were home. He was 15 and I guess thought he could handle it, but I was about 11, so I can't even begin to tell you what he needed it for. Anyway, it kicked back real hard when he turned it on and he panicked and dropped it and completely chainsawed off what seemed like half his foot but ended up just being 4 of 5 toes and part of the very top right side. The EMT had to turn off the chainsaw when the ambulance arrived because neither me or my brother could do it. We literally had to wait while my brother and I held the shirt to his foot. We also had to tie a sleeve around this leg because the lady on the phone told us to, while the EMT carefully snuck up on a running chainsaw and turned it off. He was fine, but those toes are toast and he's now a 29-year-old father of 4 with a prosthetic insert for all his right shoes. Another military medicine tale. User for at 0300. Guy shows up with a shriveled and black dong. I ask him what happened. Turns out he contracted gonorrhea from a H downtown and was too ashamed to go to our ED clinic for treatment. Wrapped a rubber band several times around the base of his dong to stop the discharge. End result was a trip back to the US and a lot of surgery. I got a lot of these stories. 22 years in military medicine. This is not my story, nor do I know how true it is, but I don't see why it would be a lie. My high school biology teacher has a best friend who isn't a physician. The doctor told my teacher a story, who then passed it on to us, about a drunk and belligerent college kid who came in unconscious. He woke up to a catheter in him and walked into the hallway, urine bag in hand, demanding the doctor take it out. After the doctor refused, he got angry and decided to throw the bag at the doctor, who promptly stepped out of the way. You can imagine what happened next. I work in a hospital, have had to remove bottles of ethanol-based hand sanitizer from the rooms of patients who have alcohol addictions. They actually try drinking the stuff. Yuck. Yep, this is practically what killed my sister. My own dumbass case here. In summer of 2014, me and my friends were fricking around with a blowgun. We gladly used rolled up papers as ammo. A friend of mine decided to aim at me and blow. As he blowed, I turned my head away, and suddenly I heard a bang followed by the loudest ringing sound. The paper penetrated right through my eardrum while I turned. What are the odds? After I went to the doctors, he told me he hasn't experienced something like this. Dumb. Ever. Ringing sound went away after 6 weeks. As a man who suffers from tinnitus, I can say you got off lucky. Patient here was chopping wood, wearing flip-flops, at the cottage. Was 90 minutes from a hospital and axed myself in the foot. Luckily, I missed all the important bits and just needed 20 something stitches. Doc tells me they have a word for people like me. Sishirt, an idiot from the city. I was not offended. In residency, my so-sore patient with severe lacerations to the vagina. Come to find out, she and her old man were having a rather passionate time, and being a good man he wanted to spice it up. Looking about, he didn't see what he wanted, so he ran to the kitchen, grabbed her, I am not making this up, star cookie cutter, put it on his manhood and ran back and sliced her pee into ribbons. How many vajas must suffer before our government puts a warning label on star cookie cutters? What the frick? I worked as a scribe in the ED. Had a blacklisted patient come in looking for pain meds. Computer records say her last visit was maybe 6 months prior. During the exam, she told us it was her first time at this hospital. So my physician says, so you're saying you were never here back in March 2016? What about December 2015? No? Do you have an identical twin who may be using your name? Because that's the only way I believe you were never here. No? Oh, this is very serious then. I think we have a case of identity theft going on. Hold on just a moment and I can contact PD for you. The patient quickly remembered her previous visits and eloped shortly after that conversation. I worked and volunteered as a firefighter EMT. This dumbass got into a fight with his girl while driving along, so she pulls over and kicks him out of the car. She drives off and he starts walking. A short while later she, after picking up her mother, drives back by, and this dumbass decides he is going to kick the car. The moving car. The car going 50 miles an hour. The only thing holding his foot on below the ankle was a thin bit of skin and muscles. His heel was touching the back of his leg. He got to enjoy a lot of morphine during his helicopter flight to the trauma center. I worked as a 911 call taker for a while. I get a call from a woman who said her friend's son sent her a picture of her 19-year-old kid with a snake bite. She's not there with him, but is on the way. I get his number and call him. Hi, I'm Monster Mayhem from Emergency Services. I got a call that you were bitten by a snake. What happened? Dude was bitten on the hand by a rattlesnake the day before. Not unusual. Rattlesnakes are common in this neck of the woods and people like to pick them up for some reason. I start getting an ambulance rolling his way and ask about his condition. His hand is black, blue and swollen as frick. It hurts, but he hasn't really done anything about it. He's at home watching TV. Scene safety is drilled into us from the get-go. Even though it's been 24 hours since the bite, I ask if he knows where the snake is. In her tank, of course. Silly me. Who doesn't have a freaking pet venomous snake? Before I could get farther into that line of questioning, the ambulance pulls up, so I'll let them deal with it. I monitor the call for the next few hours. Super unusual to have a call like that go on for so long. Usually they pick him up and take him to the hospital. Not long after the bus gets there, police are called out. Apparently this dumbass was trying to commit suicide by snake bite. I say dumbass because it can kill you and it's going to hurt the entire time you're dying. I don't know what happened to the snake. I think animal control politely refused the call and they had to get a specialist to deal with it. I work at an animal hospital. One of the techs told me a lady called in one day and was frantic because her dog ate some capsule that was on the ground outside. She then told our tech that there was another capsule on the ground, so the lady herself decided to ingest it to feel what her dog felt. Apparently avocado hand is a thing. For the unaware, avocado hand is a colloquial name for a mechanism of injury where someone holds one half of an avocado in one hand and tries to remove the stone with a knife. They slip and stab themselves in the hand. Woman couldn't afford an IUD but wanted to have a similar type of birth control, so she figured if she used super glue it would do the trick. So she came in with severe burning to her cervix. Yep. Super glued cervix. Yep. Not a doctor, 911 operator and EMT. I had someone call one night because their girlfriend burned herself with a pot of hot water. He told me it happened about 20 minutes prior to him calling, and in the meantime he had slathered on butter to cool the wound. Quite shocked at that. I said, oh no sir, we do not put butter on burns, and he was like, wait, is that bad? Growing up we always held a frozen stick of butter on burns. At some point it changed to dunking it in a bowl of ice water, but I never quite knew what the logic for butter was. It's not a specific event. but it is the people that come into emergency along the lines of this. I've been having chest pain for 3 months and decided to come in today because I was driving by. Or, I have a doctor's appointment at 4 PM but I have some free time now. We told this person that we're refusing to see them and that they can wait until their appointment. Not only are they wasting our time and money, the emergency doc, but the family doc that now has a no-show for an hour slot. BTW, this is in Canada, so usually no charges to the patient for no-shows and being seen in emergency. A 30-something-year-old lady came in with vaginal bleeding. Nothing else noteworthy going on. No abdominal pain. No stinging when she peed. No abnormal discharge. No fevers. And the bleeding wasn't particularly heavy. Her last period was 4 weeks earlier. And she had regular 4-weekly periods. Surprise, surprise. Period. I was the patient. I was cooking latkes, potato pancakes, drunk at 2 AM. Latkes are cooked in a heavy bottom skillet full of oil. I forgot about this and decided to do the pan flip thing, dousing my entire arm and getting burnt really badly. Doctor asked me if there were at least good latkes. I was on a clinical rotation in school and someone took something like 11 Benadryl trying to get high. Poor thing got her stomach pumped and ended up on a psych hold restrained to her bed because she was too loopy to communicate, and family and staff assumed a suicide attempt because she hadn't had any substance abuse in her past, to their knowledge. A guy came in today with a perforated colon. He claimed it was from an ice cube he inserted while in the shower. I'm a medic. Responded to a call for an eye problem. Grandma had put too much eyeliner on 1-year-old granddaughter and her eyelashes stuck together. Some girl rear-ended a stationary garbage truck at around 45 miles per hour and stated he came out of nowhere, just like 40-year-old virgin. Her phone was on the floorboard in front of her. 10-year-old kid brought Carolina ghost peppers into school, gave them to 3 friends. Him and his friends ended up in the nurse's office. Nurse freaked out and called EMS. The kid who brought them in said it was his friend's fault for eating them. He also told me he has fed them to his cat before. Some dude called 911 after he got pepper sprayed trying to stab someone. Overdose of this guy, his mom, and his buddy all together in the car. Cool family bonding time. Guy punched a window, broke his hand, elbowed the window for breaking his hand, possibly fractured his elbow. Doctors of Reddit, what was your dumbest I am Verismit patient experience? RN here. I see some crazy stuff, but one thing that stands out was the time I was admitting a guy to the hospital. I can't really remember what for, but he was about 400 pounds. Diabetic, heart disease, you name it. Anyhow, I'm at the computer going over some admission questions with him and his 10 family members who are crowded in the room with him. A few minutes and he starts complaining that he's thirsty. He needs something to drink right now. So I get on my phone and call the nurse assistant and ask her to bring in some ice water. As soon as the words are out of my mouth, the whole family screams no, no water. He's allergic to water. Well, this is gonna be a problem. Turns out the guy had been drinking nothing but Sprite and sweet tea for years because of his water allergy. The next question the wife had was, where are we all supposed to sleep? The whole family, 10 people, were planning to stay at the hospital with him. Was working at a clinic. I was speaking with a non-controlled diabetic patient about her sugar intake and she said she drinks a 32-ounce soda every day. I ask her if it's regular or diet and she replies with it's half regular. I let the ice melt first so there isn't as much sugar in it. Sorry, but that isn't how it works. I have had several arguments with diabetics about Coke, Kool-Aid, sweet tea versus those made with artificial sugar. I tell them, look, don't drink sugar. If you have to have something like that, use an artificial sweetener. No way. That stuff is poison. It will kill me, mom. Your A1C is 14. Sugar is already killing you. I had a patient who was a completely non-compliant diabetic, smoker, morbidly obese, who had his first heart attack at 45. His blood pressure was also super high, and instead of taking his antihypertensive medications, he went to the gym. In the gym, he would sit in the sauna for a very long time, and sweat a lot, and lower his blood pressure by becoming dehydrated. I have one. I got this from my friend, who is a doctor on the children's ward in a rural hospital. These parents bring in their child whose hair is infested with lice. The lice was visible to the naked eye and could be seen crawling on the child's clothing. While the medical staff examined the child, in order to determine a course of action, they discovered the child was covered in a white powder and smelled heavily of chemicals. They asked the parents what were the substances and the smells emanating from the child. The parents said, quite matter of fact, it was Savine powder and flea and tick spray they used on their dogs on the family's farm. Needless to say, social workers were notified about this case. Had a neighbor in rural TN who was convinced that the best way to treat her child's head lice was to comb diesel fuel through it, and that doing it in an enclosed living room while smoking cigarettes was acceptable. She was baffled when CPS took her kid away. 70-year-old female tripped and fell 2 days ago. She came in with hip pain but reports after the fall her nose was bleeding. She had landed on her nose. About a year prior her dentist had messes up an infraorbital nerve block and caused some swelling in that region, but that all was resolved. This old lady is now convinced her nosebleed after falling on her face is related to an infection from the dental issue a year ago. After multiple back and forth on the etiology of the nosebleed, she became the first patient I raised my voice and put down an authoritative "No, you are wrong. Just stop it." This has got to be the medical equivalent to the update you installed on the computer a year ago is making it run funny. Get over here and fix it. I work for an optometrist and it was the month before school started and a woman brought in her son to have his eyes checked for the first time. Seems like a pretty reasonable thing for any parent, even if he was a little older than usual for a first eye exam. Better late than never, I guess. The mom was well spoken and appeared fairly intelligent. Everything went as normal. The doctor examined the boy and ended up prescribing glasses. When the doctor was explaining to the mom that her son had to wear his glasses all the time since he's nearsighted and basically can't see clearly past 5 feet in front of him, and will definitely need glasses for school. For some reason this caused a switch to flip in the moment she spazzed out on the doctor, saying that her son doesn't need glasses and that the doctor is only saying that he does because he wants to sell glasses. She says that she only brought her son in because there was some form for school that needed to be filled out and that doctors are all a con artist trying to push unnecessary medications and interventions. The doctor tried to calm her down and explain that he's only trying to help them but that she was free to get a second opinion and gave her a copy of the kid's prescription and sent them on their way. About 4 months later the lady is back asking for another copy of her son's prescription. Apparently the first semester midterm results were in, and her son failed them all because he couldn't see the board in his classes and needs glasses. Not a doctor but I'm a nurse who worked in the OR at a trauma center, was doing surgery on a 19-year-old who tested positive for MNC who was grilling the anesthesiologist about every drug we were going to use in surgery because he doesn't like putting chemicals in his body. Gotta stick with that organic, fair trade, non-GMO Coke. Most of my own stories go along similar lines to patient has chest pain driving a coach load of school children. Thinks it's indigestion. Swigs bottle of Gaviscon. Later diagnosed with a huge heart attack. My favorite ever story from a colleague. A patient comes into A&E with abdominal pain. As part of the workup he gets an abdominal x-ray which shows the problem as clear as day. The colleague has then proceeded to remove, from the patient's rectum, an 8-inch replica of Nelson's column, the statue in the center of Trafalgar Square, London. On showing it to the patient, the response was, "Oh, that's Nelson. He lives up there." I've got 2 stories that stick out in my mind. The first is the mother of a toddler who came into emerg. The kid had cruddy green bloody stuff coming out of his left nostril, and a lot of redness and swelling of only the left side of his nose and the adjacent cheek. Mum was sure he caught a sinus infection and just wanted some antibiotics. Now I know some kids like shoving whatever will fit into their body orifices, and that this was more than likely given the one-sided nature of his condition. But Mom was insistent that he never puts things in his nose. It took some convincing, but I finally got her to let me take a look. Gave a squirt of midazolam in the good nostril to settle him, then dug with some tweezers through the crud until I pulled out a big Olay button battery. It would have been burning his nose for a couple days. Hopefully he healed up well. Side note, if a kid swallows a button battery, it can do a similar thing to their esophagus. This is an emergency and needs to be dealt with ASAP. Patient had a hard time getting pregnant. Finally conceived but miscarried. Patient has a D&C so she can try again. this time with medical intervention. We monitor her blood to ensure the pregnancy hormone is gone before beginning treatment, but she keeps coming back with higher levels of hormone. Docs are worried because she might have some retained placenta or pituitary disorder, and this could be super bad for future fertility. We call her in for a conversation about the hormone levels not going away. After talking together about what might be wrong, they are going to go home and think about further tests. She said, "I need to go. I have an appointment at the weight loss center for an HCG shot." Turns out that she is on the HCG diet. HCG is the pregnancy hormone. And this was after an hour of the docs saying, "We don't know why you have these constant higher levels of HCG in your blood and we are worried." Patient inquiring about birth control was adamant she wanted an IED. I mean, she probably wouldn't get pregnant after that. Had a young woman with recurring UTIs that began after a recent partner and with no STDs. Went through the standard questions trying to figure out what could be causing them and eventually found out she had been lubricating with jelly, not KY jelly. The mix-up had literally been a joke on house. It took me some effort to keep a straight face, but we eventually resolved the problem and she stopped getting UTIs. Oh lord, I'm British so didn't think jam straight away and was just imagining someone trying to get jello type jelly to stick to their bits. Oh, I have two good ones that come to mind. Clinical pharmacist here BTW with one story in the ear and one in the pharmacy. A physician told me this one. 16-year-old boy presented to the ER with an extremely swollen discolored penis. Apparently he has been using his mom's insulin needles to draw blood out of his arm and inject it into his own penis. He thought that adding blood would help increase his size. His penis was terribly infected and he was hospitalized for a week or so. One day in the pharmacy, a girl comes to the counter requesting a refill for her birth control. We pulled up her profile and realized we couldn't refill it because she just got a 28-day fill less than 2 weeks ago. When we asked what happened to the other one, she said she was out. Apparently, both her and her boyfriend were each taking a pill each and was adamant that was how they needed to prevent pregnancy. Apparently he has been using his mom's insulin needles to draw blood out of his arm and inject it into his own penis. His penis was terribly infected and he was hospitalized for a week or so. Frick, that is just gruesome. I work in the ER. We had a very pregnant patient come in needing stitches in her vagina. Turns out she was a realtor and didn't want her water to break while she was showing a house, so she put a glass cup in her pants to catch the water. Instead of using a pad or an adult diaper, she went for a glass cup. She sat down while showing a house and sure enough, it broke and cut her up pretty bad. Between the guy putting arm blood into his penis and now this, I don't think I'm gonna see my genitals again for a couple of days. I'm a corpsman, not a doctor, but I once had a patient tell me that there was no credible research that smoking was bad for one's health. Okay. 80 plus YO. Patient who was declining with multiple diagnoses and about 3 decubitus ulcers. Daughter was adamant that her father be kept on his strict paleo diet because that would supercharge his healing. She had a stack of diet books. He simply wasn't getting enough nutrition to heal the ulcers. He didn't like the diet at all. BTW. At some point you kind of have to stop being polite and just tell patients' family members bluntly that you don't have time for this crap and what you recommend, and they can do what they want and just document everything. It happens a lot, but she sticks out. I am a dental student. One patient in particular is pathological liar. During one visit, they claimed to have gone to medical school. Next visit was that they did dental army. Last visit was that they had a PhD. The patient will say things like, "Hey doc, do you need me to move my head mesial or distal number? I need you to move your head right. Hey doc, are these cavities being caused by the anaerobic pathology microbes number? They are caused by you eating snacks all day and not brushing." A patient was admitted for anemia and a localized cancer was found. She was referred to surgery so she can get cured from her localized cancer, and she started telling everyone that it was the doctors who caused the cancer and that she was doing just fine before coming to the hospital. She lectured the surgeon and my colleague, who pleaded her to get her surgery so that the cancer doesn't advance, and yet she refused, saying she knew better and probably didn't even have cancer. Some people. This kind of reminds me of my brother. He told me that when he was younger, 5 or 6 years old, He thought that when a doctor diagnosed you with a disease, it means that they actually gave you that disease. The only difference is, he quickly realized this wasn't the case and didn't become a freaking idiot like this lady. Nurse here. The number of American 20-something males who don't know what circumcision is ridiculously high. They think that boys are born circumcised. Evidence. New fathers and mothers asking me what's wrong with their newborn son's penis. He still has his foreskin. Many parents choose to have it removed when the baby is a couple days old. It's called circumcision, often followed by a parent's question, "What's circumcision?" That's when I face palm. Dead serious. We talked about circumcision in my grade 6 health class but saw any pictures. I had absolutely no idea until I was in high school. I knew what it was but had nothing to compare it to. This was pre-Google. Was working at a pediatric urgent care. Family brings in their 3-year-old unvaccinated son with autism for a weird rash. They couldn't give me any reason why when I asked them about his vaccination status. Said it before, I'll say it again. Had a patient insist I didn't have a heart attack. I had a myocardial infarction. That's just the technical term for a heart attack. Genius. Patient had an anoxic brain injury from drug overdose. She was 23. Her father demanded a brain matter transplant and oxygen directly put into her brain to fix it. Then he decided they would trash and peg her, send her to a nursing home, and wait for a cure, because we didn't know what we were doing. I was a unit secretary and nurse aide on a radiation oncology unit in the early 2000s. We had a patient show up through the year and was admitted for emergency radiation treatment. She had a massive fungating mass in her mouth that had consumed half her head. When the rad-onc doc tried to examine her and open her mouth, her remaining teeth fell out into his hand. It had eaten through the bones of her face, invaded her eye socket, everything. Doc said it was the worst case of mouth cancer he'd seen. According to her husband, she had a small lesion on her hard palate, and upon receiving the diagnosis of an early-stage squamous cell carcinoma, she decided to treat with essential oils and things like frankincense because chemo was poison. Her husband said he had tried to reason with her but she was adamant about the natural treatment. She died in agony shortly after. You know, I usually adamantly refuse to allow my happiness to be disrupted by stuff on the internet. But it's stuff like this that makes me feel justified in allowing myself to be triggered when I see someone I know on Facebook posting horrible misinformation from somewhere like Natural News. ORN here, not a physician, but you may find this interesting. Young adult male presents with multiple abscesses on various parts of his body. States he injected his boyfriend's semen into himself trying to get pregnant. He tells one of the APCs he should have gone with his original plan and tried on his dog first. Psych clears him. He's admitted to the floor and gets IV antibiotics. What? I've seen enough of Reddit today. You have been spotted by the rare flying floofer. If you comment good boy below, he don't steal your hot dogs anymore. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.